Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the quietest person in the room, the one who seems to blend into the background, what if they're carrying a past so intense, so shaped by violence and turmoil that it could erupt and change everything?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating idea, right? The idea that someone can have this outward calmness, but inside they're dealing with the scars of some really heavy experiences. And it makes you wonder, when is that past going to come to the surface? How is it going to impact everything?
Exactly. And that's exactly the kind of raw emotional power we're diving into today as we explore Eskens' thriller, The Quiet Librarian. So if you find yourself gravitating towards stories of resilience, hidden identities, and suspense, that'll keep you guessing until the very end. Well, you know the drill. Hit that like button and subscribe. All right, so The Quiet Librarian introduces us to Hana Babić, a librarian in a small Minnesota town. On the surface, she seems pretty ordinary. But beneath that everyday facade, there's a secret history, a past intertwined with the Bosnian War. And as a brutal crime shakes up her present, Hana's carefully constructed life starts to crash headfirst into the ghosts of her past. You can find a link to the book on Amazon down in the description if you're ready to dive in yourself. Don't worry, we won't spoil any major plot twists for you. But what we are going to do is peel back the layers of Hana's story and explore the impactful historical context that shaped who she is. So let's start by getting to know Hana as she exists before her world gets turned upside down.
Right. So initially, Hana is presented as someone who's intentionally faded into the background. Even the kids at the library have a kind of sweet nickname for her, the sweater lady. It says a lot about her desire to go unnoticed, like she's actively choosing to be invisible.
Totally. It screams avoiding attention at all costs, like maybe even a way of self-preservation. You get the feeling she's carrying some heavy burdens and just wants to be left alone. And as we see her working in the library, sorting through books, her clothes even seem to reinforce this image of someone who doesn't want to stand out. But then Detective Claypool walks in, and all that changes. He's there specifically to find her, and Hana's reaction is immediate and intense.
The book describes her in that moment, frozen like a rabbit caught in headlights. You really feel the fear, right? It makes you realize there's something in her past she desperately wants to keep hidden. And the fact that no one comes to the library looking for her, that just highlights how well she's managed to stay under the radar, making Claypool's appearance even more of a threat. It begs the question, what kind of past makes someone need to disappear that thoroughly?
It's a good question. And the reason Claypool gives for looking for her really sets everything in motion. He tells her name was found on some documents related to a woman named Amina who was murdered. Hana is instantly thrown into turmoil. The past she's worked so hard to escape, as she puts it, is suddenly right there, threatening to catch up with her.
Right, it's like all those carefully constructed walls she's built around herself are starting to crumble. Finding her name on those documents is the first crack, and it makes you wonder, how could a quiet, unassuming librarian be connected to a murder investigation, and one that seems to dig up her hidden history?
Which brings us to Hana's deep connection with this woman, Amina, and to Amina's grandson, Dylan. This wasn't some surface-level friendship. We're talking decades of shared experiences woven through major life events, like the birth of Amina's daughter, Sarah, then Sarah's wedding, the arrival of Dylan, and even the tragedy of Sarah's death. Hana was there through it all, the good times and the unbearable ones.
It's such a significant detail, the depth and length of their bond. It really explains why Amina's death has such a profound impact on Hana. They shared so much history, so much trust. And there's this line in the book, they were supposed to grow old together, that just adds this layer of sadness. It makes you think about how losing someone that close can just completely unravel your world.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just friendship, right? Years ago, when things were really rough, Hana made a very specific promise to Amina's son, Danis. I will always protect him. Now, Danis isn't around anymore, but that promise, made in a time of crisis, clearly still weighs on Hana, especially in the context of her relationship with Dylan, Amina's grandson. It's like that promise has transferred over to him in a way.
Definitely. Promises made in the midst of intense emotions or during really difficult times, they tend to stick with you, don't they? And what's really interesting here is how that promise to Danis might be driving Hannah's fiercely protective feelings towards Dylan. It makes you wonder if maybe she sees it as fulfilling a promise she couldn't keep in the past. Or maybe it's a form of atonement. Or maybe it's just purely out of loyalty to Amina and her family. There are a lot of layers there.
Yeah, no doubt. And adding to this already complex situation, just before Amina's death, the two of them had a conversation that hinted at trouble brewing. Amina told Hana she'd broken up with a man named Zim because she couldn't trust him anymore. She said things like, "He's not the man I thought he was." And even more chilling, "There's no doubt he is not to be trusted." Their conversation ended with a simple plan to meet for coffee, a plan that, sadly, never happened. Amina had seen some red flags with Zaim, like his habit of flattering her and borrowing money. Classic signs of trouble, right?
And it's that unfulfilled plan for coffee that just adds to the sadness of it all, doesn't it? It shows how sudden and permanent Amina's death was, leaving Hana with all these unanswered questions and maybe even some guilt, like, what if I'd pushed her for more details? Could I have seen this coming? It just highlights how even the most significant moments in our lives can be surrounded by these ordinary everyday things.
Right. And then Amina is murdered. The police, based on what some kids saw, initially think she was pushed from her balcony by a man. But Hana, with her own past experiences, starts to develop her own theories about what really might have happened.
Right from the start, Hana has this feeling that Amina's killer was actually looking for something, or maybe even someone, and that this search could be connected to Hana's own hidden past. She even thinks to herself, after all these years, could it be possible? Why not? Hana knows all too well how the bitter taste of revenge can linger on the tongue. That thought reveals so much. It suggests that revenge has played a big, maybe even defining role in her own life.
Absolutely. And then there's this. Amina's dying word, according to the police, was iblis. Hana's interpretation of this word is really important. It can be a direct reference to the man who raped her during the Bosnian War, but she also considers its broader meaning, monster, or some kind of evil figure from her past. This ambiguity opens up a whole range of possibilities about who might be involved and why.
It really speaks to how trauma can affect someone. A single word becomes loaded with all these different meanings based on past experiences with fear and violence. It prevents Hana from jumping to conclusions and shows how memory and trauma can distort the way we see things.
And this leads us to the revelation of Hana's hidden past and how it's tied to the Bosnian War. Almost as soon as she hears about Amina's death, Hana goes straight to a computer at the library and, here's the key thing, opens an incognito window. What does she search for? Nura Divjak, Duchess Republic of Serbia. Notice that FRS, that's the domain for Serbia, which is a very deliberate detail.
Using that incognito window immediately tells us Hana's trying to keep her search secret. It plays into that theme of hidden identity, right? And that Dognayas domain points directly to Serbia and the whole complex political situation in the former Yugoslavia. It suggests that her hidden past, the one she's trying to keep buried, is somehow connected to this place. What is she so afraid of people finding out?
Well, her search leads her to something chilling. A wanted poster for Nura Divjak, also known as the Night Mora. It was issued in Bosnia and Herzegovina back in 1995. The reward offered for her capture is huge, starting at 3 million dinars and later going up to 8 million. She's wanted for murdering innocent civilians. But there's one very interesting detail. The death clause, which is usually on these kinds of posters, is missing. It means they didn't just want her dead, they wanted her alive.
That nickname, the Night Mora, is so unsettling. It brings to mind darkness, something almost mythical and terrifying. And that missing death clause really makes you think, why was it so important to capture her alive? Maybe they needed to interrogate her. Maybe there were bigger political reasons involved because of the war. It hints at something more complicated than just the simple manhunt.
Definitely. So the story takes us back in time to 1992 to Nura's life on a mountain in Bosnia with her family. We see her world through a child's eyes. Her father, Babo, her mother, Mama, her younger brother, Danis, and their Uncle Roof, all living together. It's a picture of a simple, close-knit family, very much a part of their community.
It's a powerful contrast, that peaceful beginning compared to the violence that's about to come crashing down on them. It makes the devastation so much more impactful because we see what they've lost. It really brings home the human cost of war, how easily ordinary lives can be destroyed.
But even during this peaceful time, there's a sense that war is coming. Young Nura sees images of tanks in Slovenia and Croatia on TV. It feels like the conflict in those places is inevitably going to reach their remote mountain home. Her father, Babo, says this really chilling line, "War has a way of finding everyone," foreshadowing at its finest. We also start to see the tension and anxiety caused by the war reflected in the different views Babo and Uncle Roof have. Eventually, Uncle Roof leaves to help defend Srebrenica, a place that would later become known for a horrible massacre.
Yeah, those early conversations about the war and the different ways people are reacting to it really show the fear and uncertainty that was gripping the region. And Uncle Roof going to Srebrenica, that adds a whole other layer of weight to the story, knowing what would happen there. It shows how this impending war was already tearing families and communities apart.
So even as a young girl, Nura has this strong desire to be involved, to go hunting with the men. But her father, Babo, being the protective father he is, teaches her something different, how to set snares. It seems like a small detail, but it actually tells us a lot about Nura's resourcefulness and Baba's loving, even if a bit traditional, way of protecting her.
And teaching her to set snares. It foreshadows her later ability to think strategically and use her environment to survive, a skill that becomes essential for her later on. And while Baba's protectiveness is clearly out of love, it also speaks to the limitations placed on women in that culture, limitations that Nura will eventually have to break free from.
There's this incredibly poignant moment where young Nura asks her father, "Why do the Serbs want to hurt us, our family? We have done nothing wrong." Babo tries to explain these complex political tensions to her, saying, "I don't think Yugoslavia was ever meant to be a country. There are factions." It's heartbreaking seeing a child try to understand the senseless violence of adults.
That simple question from Nura cuts through all the political rhetoric and gets to the core of what makes war so tragic, the devastating effect it has on innocent people. And Bubbo struggled to explain it to her. It shows how hard it is to rationalize such brutality, especially to a child who's only known peace.
As the war gets closer, Nura makes promise to her younger brother, Danis. She tells him he'll go to school and that she'll protect him from the war. This promise, made with all the earnestness of a child, becomes incredibly significant, even haunting, later in the story.
It's a promise that really stays with Nura, you know. Her inability to keep it will have a huge impact on her actions later on, driving her need for justice, maybe even revenge. It highlights that burden of guilt and responsibility that survivors often carry with them.
And then, the unthinkable happens. Soldiers attack their mountain home. Their house is set on fire, and Nura's entire family, Babo, Mama, and little Danis, are brutally murdered. Nura somehow manages to escape the slaughter.
This is the moment that completely changes Nura's life. The violence, the sudden loss of her family, it's the catalyst for her transformation from a child into a survivor, fueled by loss and trauma.
In the aftermath, surrounded by devastation, Nura tries to bury her family. The book describes how she can't even perform the traditional Muslim cleansing rituals because of the condition of their bodies and her own overwhelming grief. She makes a promise to come back with an imam and Uncle Roof, a promise that shows how deeply connected she is to her faith and traditions, even in the face of such horror.
It's such a powerful detail. It emphasizes how war doesn't just destroy lives. It disrupts the very things that bring people comfort and meaning. Her promise to return, it shows that even though her world has been shattered, her respect for her family and her heritage remains. It's a testament to the lasting impact of this kind of trauma.
Now, bringing us back to Amina's death, Hana starts to think that Amina's blue marble necklace, something she always wore, was actually a warning. Like it was Amina's way of saying, Iblis is back. That simple necklace becomes a link between the evil of Hana's past and the danger surrounding Amina's murder.
It goes from being a piece of jewelry to a symbol, a warning sign. It connects the two timelines, the past and the present, suggesting that the darkness they both experienced might be resurfacing. It makes you curious about the specific meaning of that necklace, like maybe it held a special significance only they understood.
And Hana also remembers Amina giving birth to her daughter, Sarah. Sarah was conceived when Amina was raped by a man she called Iblis, a man named Savić. Despite the horrible circumstances of her conception, Amina chose to see Sarah as her beautiful daughter, refusing to let the evil of her father define her. It shows Amina's incredible strength and resilience, her ability to find love and hope, even in the darkest of times.
That's really powerful, Amina's perspective. It shows the amazing ability of the human spirit to overcome trauma and find love even in the most difficult situations. Her refusal to let Sarah be defined by her father's actions speaks volumes about her strength and resilience. It also firmly establishes Savić as a figure of pure evil in their shared past.
And the memory of her younger brother Danis and his fear of the war, it haunts Hana. She can't shake the feeling that she failed to protect him, that she broke her promise.
That broken promise becomes a constant source of pain for Nura. It probably plays a big part in her determination to protect Dylan, Amina's grandson. Maybe it's her way of making amends for the past, of finally fulfilling that protective role she couldn't when her brother needed her. Trauma can leave such a long-lasting mark.
Let's go back to the investigation in the present day. Hana goes with Detective Claypool to Amina's apartment and has been completely ransacked. Furniture is overturned, drawers are empty, even the mattress has been slashed open. It's clear that whoever was there was looking for something specific.
The state of the apartment shows how desperate the person was to find whatever they were looking for. It suggests they believed Amina had something really valuable, something important enough to tear the place apart to find.
One really disturbing detail is a dining room chair with a broken slat. The police think this is where Amina was tied up with zip ties. This image really gets to Hana, reminding her of Amina's helplessness in a very visceral way. It's a stark reminder of the violence Amina experienced.
It's a chilling image, Amina bound and helpless. It echoes the violence she might have experienced in her past. And for Hana, who also knows what it's like to be powerless in the face of violence, this would be especially disturbing. It reinforces her determination to find out what happened and bring the perpetrator to justice.
There's one important thing missing from the apartment: Amina's laptop. And while Hana is looking around, she sees a photo of herself and Amina taken at Sarah's wedding. Amina is wearing that blue marble necklace in the picture. Hana subtly takes the photo, and she notices a receipt for some car repairs that Amina paid for. Again, very discreetly, she takes the receipt. These actions show that Hana's not just a passive observer. She's starting to do her own investigation, operating outside of what the police are doing.
Those little actions tell us a lot about Hana. She's resourceful, and she doesn't fully trust that the police will uncover everything. She's taking matters into her own hands, looking for clues they might miss.
Let's go back to Noura's story after she escapes the fire. She finds her Uncle Ruth's house, but it's empty. She takes some of his clothes, and the smell of her uncle and father on the fabric gives her a moment of comfort amidst all the devastation. We also learn that she's badly burned and has to cut away her fused sleeves with her father's knife. It's a brutal image that shows her sheer will to survive.
These are such powerful details that highlight the physical and emotional trauma Noura went through. Taking her uncle's clothes, it's like she's clinging to a piece of her family, looking for any kind of comfort she can find. And her cutting away that burned flesh, it's a visceral image of her determination to live, even in the face of incredible pain.
Fueled by grief and rage, Noura vows to get revenge on those who killed her family. She finds a map and realizes she needs a car to escape. She takes her father's old Yugo and starts this dangerous journey, even having to drive through a creek at one point.
This journey represents her determination to escape the horrors of her past and seek revenge. Driving that little Yugo through the creek, it symbolizes her will to overcome any obstacle. She's gone from being a victim to becoming a force driven by vengeance.
And in a moment of poignant grief, she finds her brother Danis's blue marble in her uncle's clothes. She keeps it close, a reminder of her brother and the promise she couldn't keep.
That blue marble becomes a powerful symbol of her loss and the weight of that broken promise. It's a constant source of pain, but also motivation, a physical connection to the innocent life that was taken from her.
So, back in the present, Hana decides to use that car repair receipt she took from Amina's apartment. She goes to see a mechanic named Rick, pretending to be a woman who gave a man all her savings for a car but never got the title. She's being very clever, trying to get information without revealing her true motives.
It shows how resourceful Hana is. She's willing to bend the truth to get what she needs. She's not afraid to go outside the official channels to find answers.
And it works. The mechanic remembers the repair and says it was paid for by a woman, Amina. And he gives Hana the address where the car was towed. Not a name, just a place. It's a solid lead for Hana, another piece of the puzzle.
That address is a key piece of information, possibly linking Amina to a specific place that Hana can investigate. It keeps the suspense building, you know.
Now back to Noura's story. She comes across a Serbian checkpoint. Her heart's pounding and she's ready to kill if she has to, just to survive. But just as she's about to be captured, two Bosniak soldiers, Adam and Enes, show up and save her. This moment, especially Adam standing up for her, hints at a deeper connection between them that will develop later.
It's a turning point for Noura. She's been so focused on revenge, on surviving alone, but now she encounters compassion and protection from unexpected sources. Adam stepping in to save her offers a glimmer of hope.
Back in the present, Hana is trying to learn more about Zain. She talks to a neighbor who overheard a phone conversation where Zain was threatening someone. The neighbor remembers him saying, "Don't think about double-crossing me. I've killed before, so don't fuck with me." The neighbor also mentions another woman who also had a Bosnian accent but thicker than Hana's, who was looking for Zain and threatening him. This introduces a whole new set of questions and possible suspects.
That conversation paints Zaim as a dangerous man, involved in some shady stuff, and the mention of another Bosnian woman looking for him. That just complicates things even more. It makes you wonder about Zaim's past and who else he might have wronged.
We go back to Noura, who's now at a Bosniak camp led by Captain Kovac. She's consumed by her need for revenge, so she throws herself into training. We're talking grueling calisthenics, intense hand-to-hand combat, Krav Maga. She's determined to become a weapon.
This is Nura taking control. She's gone from being a victim to becoming someone who can fight back. Her focus on revenge shows the depth of her trauma and how it's driving everything she does.
During this time, she forms a bond with Adam, one of the soldiers who saved her. They've both experienced such loss, and there's this quiet understanding between them. He becomes her protector and teacher, showing her how to drive a truck and handle weapons. And during her target practice, she focuses on an imaginary devil dog, representing her tormentors.
Adam represents a possibility of healing for Nura. They connect on a deep level because of their shared experiences. He becomes a source of support and guidance. And that devil dog target, it's a powerful image of her need for revenge, showing how she's channeling all that pain and anger into a focused goal.
Back in the present, Hana goes to the Bosnian Community Center to talk to a woman named Barina, hoping to find out more about Zaim. And Barina drops a bombshell. Zaim dated her, and during their relationship, he found out about her time as a prisoner at the Valina Vlas Hotel during the war. He knew about a horrible choice she was forced to make involving another prisoner named Izeta. Barina says that after she told Zaim she'd made peace with Izeta's family, he disappeared from her life. She suspects Zaim might actually be Serbian, and she gives Hana GPS coordinates to some land he owns, saying she wants righteous punishment for him if he hurt Amina.
This is a huge revelation. It connects Zaim directly to the horrors of the war. He was willing to use Barina's traumatic experiences for his own gain, which tells us a lot about his character. And those GPS coordinates give Hana a place to focus her investigation.
Hana decides to casually ask Dylan about Zaim, and Dylan's reaction is immediate and negative. I don't like him. He remembers Zaim being at their house, which confirms that Zaim was involved in Amina's life. And Dylan's strong dislike, that's a big red flag for Hana.
Kids often have a good sense about people, you know? Dylan's reaction reinforces Hana's suspicions about Zaim and his possible involvement in Amina's death.
Using the GPS coordinates, Hana finds Zaim's trailer. It's isolated and run down. Armed with the knife, she approaches cautiously at night. And as she gets closer, a horrible smell hits her, the smell of death. It's a smell that brings back terrifying memories of Bosnia.
The return of that smell is a powerful trigger for Hana, immediately connecting her back to the horrors of her past. It prepares her for what she might find.
Inside the trailer, she finds Zaim dead. He's tied to a chair, strangled. There are files scattered around indicating he was involved in something illegal, but none of them belong to Amina.
Zaim's murder just throws another wrench into things. Who killed him? Was it the same person who killed Amina? And why were Amina's files not there? It suggests the killer was looking for something else, something more specific.
Hana, without hesitation, calls 911 anonymously to report the body. Later, Detective Claypool questions her about Zaim's death, putting her back in the spotlight. The police investigation reveals Zaim's real name, Ivanović. He's wanted for war crimes in Bosnia and is suspected of stealing the real Zaim Galic's identity. The real Zaim vanished during the Srebrenica massacre. This changes everything. The man Hana knew as Zaim was a war criminal, a ghost from the past.
That discovery changes the whole game. It links these present-day murders directly to the Bosnian War. It suggests something much bigger and more sinister is going on.
And this new information about Ivanović gives them a new theory about Amina's murder. They think he was blackmailing her, using information he got from stolen therapist files. This information includes evidence that Lukasavić, the man who raped Amina, committed a war crime. Now Lukasavić is officially part of the story in the present day.
The blackmail angle adds another layer of intrigue. Amina wasn't killed randomly. She was targeted because of what she knew. And those stolen therapy files...
It's disturbing, right? The repercussions of war are reaching into these very private and personal spaces.
Now Amina's dying word, Iblis, takes on a new, more specific meaning. It could be a direct reference to Lukasavić. Detective Claypool tells Hana they found a burner phone in Ivanović's trailer, and it had made a call to the UN mission of Serbia in New York. And then it clicks for Hana. She remembers seeing Lukasavić's name in Amina's therapy notes. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together.
That phone call is a huge link between Ivanović and Lukasavić. And Hana recognizing Luka's name from the therapy notes, it confirms his direct connection to Amina and the danger she was in.
Hana believes Lukasavić is coming for Dylan, so she sets a trap in her barn. She's ready to do whatever it takes to protect him, even if it means killing Luka. And she's right. Luka shows up and falls into her trap. Setting that trap shows how far Hana's come. She's willing to take extreme measures to keep Dylan safe. She's become a protector, someone who will fight for what she believes in.
Hana confronts Luka and tells him she knows about what he did to her family in Bosnia and to Amina. But just then, Detective Claypool arrives. Caught in the moment, Hana makes a difficult choice. It's strongly implied that she takes the blame for Luka's death to protect Dylan.
That moment when Claypool arrives is pivotal. Hana is forced to make a split-second decision that will change her life. Her willingness to sacrifice her own freedom for Dylan's safety is a powerful testament to her love and loyalty.
In the aftermath, Claypool meets with a representative from the Serbian UN mission and the police chief. They decide to cover up Luka's death, making it look like a suicide to avoid an international incident. The official story is that he was blackmailing Amina with those stolen therapy files and that he killed her and then himself. The Serbian UN mission gets the laptop back, but the police keep a copy of the hard drive. Luka's body is suddenly back to Serbia. Justice in this case is shaped by political concerns.
This ending highlights how complicated things can be when personal justice intersects with international politics. The fact that Luka's death is covered up to avoid a diplomatic mess shows how far people in power will go to protect their interests. But the police, keeping that hard drive? That suggests the truth might come out eventually.
So for you, the learner, what can we take away from The Quiet Librarian? It's more than just a thriller. It's a deep exploration of how the past shapes the present. Hana's journey shows the enduring effects of trauma, the complexity of identity, and the fierce protective instincts that can drive us to do extraordinary things.
Think about the layers of identity in this story. How do Noura's experiences during the war shape the choices Hana makes in the present? Can we ever truly escape our past? Or are we forever marked by what we've experienced?
And what about the themes of justice and revenge? Are they the same thing? How do Hana's actions, driven by her trauma and her need to protect Dylan, reflect those ideas?
This deep dive has just scratched the surface of The Quiet Librarian. What part of Hana's story resonated most with you? What stood out?
We encourage you to read the book and experience the full impact of Alan Eskens' storytelling. Share your thoughts, your favorite moments, and any questions you have in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. What questions did this discussion raise for you?
And here's a final thought for you to consider. In a world where terrible things often go unpunished, how far would you go to protect the innocent and face the ghosts of history?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.